talk about, oh, the Fed's going to get together and they're going to raise rates. Those are short-term interest rates. We're talking about Fed funds rate. We're not talking about 20 and 30-year rates. And tax-exempt rates and treasury rates, will they meander upwards? Probably. Right now they are at an enormous low. But I have been telling people for 10 years that rates are going to go up, and they never seems to happen. So I think they're going to meander sideways for a while and slightly rise. I am really not an expert in any way, shape, or form on construction costs. All I have is anecdotal information, and I think they're going to rise, as they probably already have, just given how hot the San Francisco Bay Area market is right now for construction. You would think they were going to rise. Is that reason enough to proceed? I would think more about what are our needs for the next couple years, and then figure out where do you want to be on that last piece, or even delay, for a year or so. I mean, all of those are options. It's really about what do you, as a board, think you need in terms of to provide the best quality facilities possible, without trying to fortune tell interest rates, construction costs, all of those things, which are usually used as an excuse to kind of get you to move one direction or the other. I really think about what you need and what you want to do. And Mark, do you want to get up and contradict me on interest rates?
No.
Okay.
So on these short-term bonds that you put here at the 521 million and the 500, payback of 565, is that a projection of $60 per
$100,000 of assessed valuation, yes.
So if we did nothing now and waited until the election in 2017, we're talking about 84 and 60.
I'm sorry, which page are you on?
I was on page 19.
Okay.
So at the short-term bonds,
Yeah, so let me just...
that's at a $60 rate per 100,000, that's what you have there.
Right.
I'm thinking in the political ramifications here.
Okay, so just to be clear, this, on page 19, this slide assumes a successful election, additional election,
Right.
in 2016.
Yes.
So if you did nothing in 2016, there would be no $60 tax rate. I mean, it would still be the tax rate that you're paying off of the 2010 and the 2002 elections, but no, there would not be an additional tax rate then. This would be an additional $60 on top of
What we're paying now.
on top of whatever you're paying now.
Right.
So you've spoken several times about political impact. What is your feeling about our pledge to the community regarding completion of projects versus a slightly increased tax rate?
Well, the fact that there is a slightly increasing tax rate doesn't give me heartburn. That's not the issue. What gives me heartburn on the tax rate side is this published pledge of remaining at $60. Is that enough to cause it to sink you in the future? No, I don't think so. But you just have to have an answer for it. And it sounds like you have a good answer for it, but it needs to be out there. Why is it that we thought we could do this, and why did we change? And part of the reason we are suggesting this in between to eliminate the capital appreciation bonds is because I think there's just a little bit of a picking the scab issue there. Not only did you tell us it was going to be $60, in your last series of bonds you went out and issued caps, which I think there's a place for. We use them a lot, but I still think they have this kind of juju kind of quality that nobody wants to talk about. So that's the tax rate side. The project side, the only part that concerns me, yes, not producing projects, I think trumps. It trumps the tax rate, no doubt about it. the part that I think you need to spend some time thinking about is how you answer the question, why such a large portion of the bond was used for solar. I think that's gonna have to be addressed. And maybe there's good reasons for it. But
Therein lies the problem, having just ran in November and walked and walked and walked and talked and talked and talked. Whatever my answer would be as a school board member, they won't believe me. Because they feel like we lied to them, and they feel like we paid for a lot of solar, and the schools haven't changed. So, I mean, I feel like I have a pretty good sense of where they are politically, because I just spent a lot of time, and I'm sure Linda heard the same thing when she was out there, so. That's what I struggle with, is going to them with anything right now.
yeah, I know it's hard to not use the personal experience as the litmus test, but you know, when you start getting into elections, especially a presidential election, you really have to do a little survey research. You really have to remember that a lot of people that are going to be voting in your typical election, your board election or gubernatorial election, there's a lot of other people that are going to be coming to the polls, and they don't follow the issue as closely as your regular voter.
I would hate to gamble on uninformed voters, and basically that's what you're hoping. People go in there and just pick anything.
No, that's not what I'm hoping. I'm saying that you have to test that and try to figure out, you know, is your instinct correct, or is that just a small number of people? Do you have to have some way of explaining that? Yeah, I think so. I don't know what that is, but I think you have to have some way of explaining that for the person that asked that question. And as you say, there are going to be some people, they're not going to take any answer. They're just not going to listen. You need to figure that out early on.
Let me ask, and this is, you know, from a novice completely at this. With this 77 million that we still have authorized to sell, is there, would it make any sense to move those to short-term bonds and sell, say, 25 million off over time and come back with a similar payback schedule with the lower interest rates?
Right. Well, that's essentially, if I can get you to turn to page 15. That's essentially what we've done here. Even though they go out, it's like 9 years or so, 10 years, you can see that the majority of these bonds, which are the gold bars, they're being paid off in a 5 or 6 year period. And that's why this interest portion is so small. So, but the short answer to your question is yes, you could do that. It would obviously, you could do it 5 years, you could do it 4 years. It would reduce the amount of funding you could receive because you're at the maximum, well, you wouldn't necessarily be at the maximum, but you'd be close to the maximum tax rate. So yes, you could push that up. To the extent you push that up, it's going to raise the tax rate a little bit in the earlier years, but you'd save even more money at that time. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Actually, it's the short-term approach that sort of brought Mr. Scott here. I think when Dr. Meyer and I first spoke with him in her office, it was an interesting strategy. It was a different take on things. I think one of our problems began in this original bond, and I was a taxpayer only at the time, not on the school board, was the project list, and that's the political part that you would have no control whatsoever. And so when you say, you know, it's looking at the amount spent on solar versus, and people saying, where is it in the classroom? I think that's the political part we have to address. And I think that going forward, I can't verify that we actually had a project list. As a taxpayer, I didn't see it. And we became one of those test cases in California, I think, for where's your project list? And where is that articulated project list? Where's the specificity? Where you can kind of get away in bonds with saying, we're going to use it for renovation. And nobody's going to say, well, we don't want to renovate the schools. People go, well, certainly, that sounds great. So we have to get through the 77 million is the one decision we have to address. We've already, what I encountered, I said before I got on the board, you could have asked me what are cabs, and I would have said hail one, you know, out there, because I had no clue except that I saw the long-term debt. And then I got on the board and ran into cabs. And so when you say the word cabs, that's another political time bomb in this district. And that's why our assessed valuation for taxpayers went up, was to try to defer or defray some of that long-term debt that we were incurring, and then compensating for a project list that people didn't think necessarily gave them what they thought of when they went for renovation of schools. So we ended up, and I was out campaigning twice, having been elected twice, talking to those people as well, and those are the issues that they're still talking about 4 years later when I ran again.